in B2B, at any given time, only roughly 4 to 5% of your target market is in an active buying cycle, meaning your ideal client profile is a certain segment out there, but at any given time, only 4 to 5% of those people are really in active buying mode, trying to find a solution provider. That's a pretty stark reality and points directly to the importance of investing in your brand because you might have another, there's roughly, based on the same research, another 40 to 45% of people, which are called poised, which poised is basically they're not actively buying yet, but they're starting to ruminate that something's going on that they've got to investigate and solve for. They're not looking for who can solve the problem, but they're digging around about the problem itself. And then you've got another 50% of your target market who's just out there going about their daily business and they think they're totally fine. Those are potential buyers for you. And that's where sales should be primarily focusing on that 4 to 5% of people that are in market and trying to engage with them and advance those discussions. Whereas marketing's primary role is really that other 95% who's not ready to talk to you, maybe is actively not interested in talking to you at all, but developing visibility with those people, developing credibility and trust so that whether it's a month, 6 months, 12 months from now, if and when another portion of those people do come into market, you're one of, if not the primary entity that they think of to help solve for that.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. Mainly what I do is run an agency, Did It, about 50 people that do digital first, but also a bunch of traditional marketing as well as a result of 11 acquisitions. I run a brand, Truth Nutrition, where I run marketing experiments that no sane Did It client would let me run so that I can actually figure out if stuff works or not. And then I run a nonprofit, Giving Forward. Super excited to have Will Milano on the show today. He's Chief Marketing Officer at Integrity Solutions. And what's sort of fun about that is, at least my understanding is that you're sort of marketing organization that also helps in sales and marketing. So it's sort of like you end up wearing multiple hats at once. But how do you go out to market with your elevator pitch these days?
So thanks for having me on with you, Kevin. I appreciate it. This is a great opportunity. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Integrity Solutions. Integrity Solutions is a corporate sales training and sales leadership development firm. So we focus on improving sales performance at the individual salesperson level and through sales leaders to help create really thriving sales cultures. We always say that integrity is in our name on purpose because our focus is on really reshaping the narrative around what it's like to be in sales and what it means to be in sales, and creating a view among sales professionals. It might sound counterintuitive, but a view among sales professionals that it's a profession to be proud of and that it's a very honorable profession. And
Yeah.
you'd be surprised, whether consciously or subconsciously, a lot of salespeople that have even been in the profession a long time, because naturally most people that are in sales sort of, for lack of a better term, stumble into it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go to college, for example, and major in sales, right? They somehow got into sales in their 20s, 30s, maybe beyond. And that's still the norm today. But so changing people's mindset, we believe, is as important and actually more important than the skill set aspect of developing sales people. We have a really strong fundamental belief that success in sales is based, not to put an exact percentage on it, but 75 to 80% on what's in between your ears and what's in your gut, much more so than the skill set, the sort of how-tos, the blocking and tackling aspects of sales, which are important: product knowledge, selling skills, CRM system how-tos, all those sorts of things are very important. But we really believe that probably in the long term, 75 to 80% of a salesperson's success is based on their mindset, their motivations, their attitudes about who they're representing, their attitudes about being in sales, as we just said, and just their beliefs about what they are capable of and what they're doing in service of customers.
So, one thing that I'd love to get your thoughts on is certainly there are folks whose title or in the org chart, right, has some kind of a sales title in it, or sometimes their title isn't actually sales, but that's their job description. And then
Yes.
you've got sort of executive level team members, and you've also got sometimes middle managers, who, even if they're not necessarily selling as, in the official way, right? They're still selling, they're educating, they're moving people down the decision cycle, or they have an influence on the final decision that the prospect or customer is making, either as an upsell or as an initial sale. So I'd love to hear how do you deal differently with those kinds of folks who maybe 10% of their time is spent selling versus somebody where hypothetically 80-90% of their time is spent selling?
Yes, I think it's actually one of the things that we help organizations do really well. And for example, a couple of examples are, say, in the banking sector, right? We do a lot of work with regional and community banks and credit unions. And part of what resonates really well about our message with those organizations is they tend to be, by nature, very, very customer centric, wanting to do right by their customers, or in the case of credit unions, for their members. Um, and the reality is that, you walk into a bank or credit union and almost nobody has the word sales in their job title, or maybe even in their job description. But what's the reality is that everybody in that banking branch, or if you're in a call center working for that bank or credit union, that sort of thing, everybody in that organization has a collective responsibility for selling. And part of it, again, sort of goes back to what I talked about before, which is, how do you define selling? We define selling as uncovering needs, filling needs, and adding value. It's not about jamming something down somebody's throat that they're not interested in. It's being genuinely curious and authentic and building trust with customers in ways that get them talking, asking really good questions, and then not only asking questions and pausing so that you can ask your next question, but actually actively listening to the answers and helping uncover needs and help them ultimately. One of our consultants says it really well, I think, which is, selling is about helping people make buying decisions that are in their best interests. So if you have people in that setting, again, just using sort of the banks and credit unions example, that view themselves, understandably, primarily as, well, I'm in customer service. I'm here to serve customers. Well, but if you view selling from that lens, the division between the two, between sales and customer service, really should dissipate, and ultimately you view them as one and the same. We also do, for example, a lot of work in life sciences, in medical device, pharmaceuticals, et cetera, where the really high majority now of people that are in those sales sort of roles are actually have grown up in their career in more clinical roles. And again, they view themselves as, I'm here to provide product information and answer questions, but I'm not a salesperson. I don't sell. But the reality is you do. And again, if you can sort of break down those conscious or subconscious barriers that are getting in the way, and understand that if you really believe in the products and services and the organization that you represent, that you start to view selling in a much different way, and you start to engage with customers, existing or new, in much different, much more sophisticated ways, I think, that they appreciate and want today.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I can't remember which of the sales training guys, it was maybe one of the books or whatever. And I can't, or maybe it was one of the sales trainers I've had over the years, but uh, I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but he sort of said, if you truly believe that you were the best, in this case it was the Did It brand, if you really truly believe that your agency and its technology was the best fit for the prospect, and they end up going a different way, you did both of you yourselves a disservice, right?
Correct.
Because it was the sales failure ended up being a sales failure on both sides, right? Because you would have been a
Absolutely.
better fit, been able to more effectively help them reach their goals. And if they went a different direction, initially I sort of used to um, blame the other sales team for like selling sizzle but not having steak, right? And I'd be
Yes.
like, okay, we got outsold, right? But the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, it was the responsibility's on me, right? And my sales team. Like if I didn't accurately portray why we were a better fit, then that's on me, right? That's
Right.
so. Yeah, but you need to have that internal vision that you are in fact the best. And then if you're not the best, you should pass on the opportunity, right? So if you sort of think we
Yes.
probably aren't the best.
If you have something that you really stand behind and think is of real value, and you've done your due diligence to get an audience in person or virtually with somebody who really fits the profile of people that your organization helps, you have a duty to ask the sort of questions that can help them come to realizations or consider questions that are maybe thoughtful in ways that they just hadn't considered even themselves. And it's simply, it can sometimes be as simple as just that ability, that learning that skill of asking really good, thoughtful, open-ended questions as well.
So I'd love to get your thoughts on what I've seen in some industry categories is it sometimes had several clients in the same industry, sometimes even at the same time in a different geography or whatever.
Mm.
And we've noticed that certain organizations are extremely sales centric, where others have more of a balance between sales and marketing, where sort of marketing is doing all of the awareness through the lead gen, and then of course leads get passed on to sales. And in other cases, the sales teams, perhaps with a chief revenue officer, they actually have taken on a little bit more of the marketing focus, but they're extremely sales focused, and they really don't even think about upper funnel at all. Right. So those
Yeah.
types of organizations are sort of underinvested in any kind of brand building or awareness marketing. They're like purely sales driven. And often there's enough demand in the marketplace to then get away with that, right? They can be like, listen, we're just going to harvest existing demand. We're not going to go out there and build a brand. There's enough people out there looking for the thing that we do. Yeah, I'm not going to sponsor a golf tournament. Like that's not of
Right.
interest to me. I'm not going to buy radio advertising or TV or Spotify or just do general targeting against the ICP. I'm just going to laser focus in. This is the list of the folks we think are our ICP, and these are the folks we're going to talk to. And we're just going to purely talk to them at a sales level. We're not going to do any marketing to them. So given the fact that you're in the role where you're sort of assisting organizations that are doing this sort of sales and CRO type stuff, but you
Yeah.
also wearing your own marketing hat have to think about how do I go out there and build a reputation for integrity and maybe do lead gen for yourselves. Like how do
Right.
you find that balance between sales and marketing?
Yeah, and it's interesting being in a CMO role for a sales training organization because I
Exactly.
really feel, um, I've got sort of one foot in both camps, right? And
Right,
understandably,
exactly.
anybody that's in either marketing or sales should have an understanding and a belief that they do play a role on both sides of the ledger there. And sales and
Right.
marketing really should, for any organization to succeed, operate cohesively. You can't decouple branding and brand awareness from lead generation. You'll hear sometimes in organizations, maybe some people that are listening hear this, like, well, yeah, all that brand stuff is good, but what we really need to do is generate leads, right?
Right.
I'd love for somebody to figure out how you generate leads without generating brand visibility and brand awareness. Now, maybe some companies that are more sort of transactional in nature can make themselves visible and generate a transaction sort of immediately or sort of on the spot. That's sort of, difference between B2B, B2C. But in B2B, um, you know, in B2B, I've seen some research recently, and I've heard this from a few industry experts that we talked to on our podcast, and it's based on the reality that in B2B, at any given time, only roughly 4 to 5% of your target market is in an active buying cycle, meaning your ideal client profile is a certain segment out there, but at any given time, only 4 to 5% of those people are really in active buying mode, trying to find a solution provider. That's a pretty stark reality and points directly to the importance of investing in your brand because you might have there's roughly, based on the same research, another 40 to 45% of people, which are called poised. which poised is basically they're not actively buying yet, but they're starting to ruminate that something's going on that they've got to investigate and solve for. They're not looking for who can solve the problem, but they're digging around about the problem itself. And then you've got another 50% of your target market who's just out there going about their daily business and they think they're totally fine. Those are potential buyers for you. And that's where sales should be primarily focusing on that 4 to 5% of people that are in market and trying to engage with them and advance those discussions. Whereas marketing's primary role is really that other 95% who's not ready to talk to you, maybe is actively not interested in talking to you at all, but developing visibility with those people, developing credibility and trust so that whether it's a month, 6 months, 12 months from now, if and when another portion of those people do come into market, you're one of, if not the primary entity that they think of to help solve for that. I talked to somebody recently who, she said to me, visibility in B2B is not about, developing your brand in B2B is much less about what do people think of you, and it's more about do they think of you at all? If they think of you at all, that trumps what they think of you all day, every day. You've got to have that memory and awareness, and that directly speaks to the importance of brand. And brand is not, absolutely not, some sort of touchy-feely, non tangible thing in an organization. The reality is your brand in B2B is typically your most valuable asset, even though it's not going to fit nicely and neatly in some spreadsheet.
Right, right. So in the B2B category, there's an entire ecosystem built around this idea that you can perhaps market to those people who are about to go into market, or the poised group, right? Whether it's a genre of ABM or whatever.
Yeah.
And as marketers, a lot of marketers are saying to themselves, well, if only 4 or 5% are going to be in market, but there's another 4 or 5% who'll be in market in the next 6 months. If I can figure out that 4 or 5%, I'd prefer
Yeah.
to dedicate my marketing budgets there as opposed to top of funnel branding and awareness and education. So, what do you think about that sort of multi-tiered strategy, right? Of doing
Well,
outreach differently to people who may be exhibiting signals of being in market soon.
and the signals thing I think is an important word because ABM or account-based marketing and sales is really it's going from the mindset of like we're going to try and focus on this lead, quote unquote, this person, and you're focusing on generating engagement and signals or intent signals, or being able to interpret intent signals across that organization. The reality is that in B2B, the average buying committee, and this is not some formal buying committee that's meeting every Tuesday afternoon and that sort of, but the people that are involved as decision makers, influencers, validators, sometimes people on the buying committee are not people that can say yes, but they are people that can say no and put the brakes on something. The number of people involved in B2B is now between 9 and 11 people in those decisions. Those organizations are tending to evaluate. Again, this is based on some research that I heard through a CMO's organization that I'm part of. Those buying groups are evaluating typically between 3 and 4, 4.5, I think is the average number of vendors. Now they're typically doing that research pretty anonymously through social media without telling you that they're there, through your website without filling out a form. The reality is the percentage of people that will go on your website and ever fill out a form to make themselves known to you as to who they are is extremely low, which again points to the importance of branding and engaging with your buyers on their terms. The nice, neat sales funnel of the past of, well, if we just get this number of people in the top, and then we'll move X amount to this stage, and this amount will convert. It's very self-serving, and it doesn't reflect the reality of, I think, of today's buying journey. They're sort of coming in market, out of market regularly. There's sort of the lines get blurred. And I think if you understand and embrace that reality of there are 9 to 11 people involved in B2B decision making. They're all interested in answers to different questions or variations on some of the same questions. So they're looking at content and interpreting content in different ways. So you've got to package your content and get it out there in as many ways as possible, in ways that people prefer to digest it. And again, you're creating that flywheel of authenticity, trust, visibility to be ready when those people are ready to move from the 50% doing nothing to the 45% that might be poised to the 4 or 5% who are actually going to be in market. It's very much a long game. It's something that there are considerations, I think, whether you're a salesperson or in marketing, but it's something that account-based marketing today is not just spray and pray. It's got to be much more nuanced than that as far as engaging with understanding who your ideal client profile actually is and going beyond just your historic data of, well, these tend to be the people that we talk to, or these are the size organizations that we've sold to. Your historic data and those sort of profiles can be valuable, but they're also sort of self-limiting too. You've got to really look at how that evolves over time. So really doing the due diligence to understand who your ideal client profile is at an organizational level, and then developing personas around who tend to be most commonly the people that are part of that informal buying committee. And then what do he and she care most about? What are they looking for? You've really got to, like, to the level of really documenting that and then weaving it into all of your outbound communications from both a marketing and a sales standpoint. And you're trying to create a brand where ultimately you want the perception of that buyer or that buying committee to be, wow, these people are everywhere. I see them everywhere I go. When the reality is that's not the case. You're just showing up in more of the places that they tend to be looking because you've done your homework about who they are and what they care about and where they go for information. And
Right.
that's not something that can happen overnight, but it's absolutely, if you're in B2B, it's that's what, to me, account-based marketing and sales is really all about.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly something that my media buying team thinks a lot about, right? Which is given any limited budget, right? We want to be in the right place at the right time with the right message,
Yes.
without with minimal waste. Obviously, you're going to always end up with some waste in any media buying campaign. Even bottom of the funnel search marketing campaigns, not everybody is exhibiting super strong signal for every keyword. So
Yeah.
it's
And
it's
especially
finding that
through
balance.
especially through digital marketing, it's obviously much easier, relatively easier today than it's ever been to find and identify and target your core segment. But yes, to your point, the reality is there's always a degree of estimating. I don't want to say guessing, but you're going to swing and miss sometimes. And you also might pleasantly surprise yourself by ending up being visible and getting the attention of people that you didn't really intend to up front, but over time you come to find they are influential, and they want to hear more of what you have to say.
As far as the buying committees and their makeup, do you have any anecdotal or evidence that you've seen with regards to uh, either SIC code or industry category or company size? Because obviously that's probably an average, the number of people that are involved in the decision-making process. But if it's a 100-person company, it's probably different than a
Oh,
500,000
certainly.
organization.
Yeah.
So,
I think it does depend on the size of the organization. It can certainly vary by industry, but I think the sort of general rule of thumb is true that no matter what size company you're targeting, whoever you think is your potential buyer, there are certainly a surround of other people that they are working with that are either, again, maybe they're not the quote unquote decision maker, but they are absolutely influencers. They're people that are doing the what I would call the fact finding on behalf of the organization. So they might be more junior. And if those people make themselves visible to you, I think a mistake that both salespeople and marketers can make is sort of dismissing some of those people based on job title, when the reality is very often what those people are doing are fact finding on behalf of more senior level people in the organization. And then you have people that are, the CFO or people that are in procurement who might not be your targeted buyer, quote unquote, for whatever your service or product is. But those are people who ultimately control the purse strings. And again, are people who can um, either rubber stamp something or say no and put the brakes on something pretty fast. So, part of selling today is, selling is much more emotional than it is logical. That's something that we teach and really strongly believe. And one of the emotional aspects of selling and buying is risk mitigation. In B2B, especially, people are petrified of messing up and making the wrong decision and having it reflect very poorly on them. That's where, again, trust, credibility, authenticity, your ability to simply prove what you've done for other customers like them and why it matters really comes into play because really can't be overstated how much um, risk and fear, frankly, can be part of the buying process and part of what is a really good salesperson's responsibility is to assuage those fears.
Yeah, that's a great point. When you're wearing your own marketing hat and you're sort of thinking about um, channels that you might have used pre-pandemic versus channels that sort of you're using now, has there sort of been a big shift either from traditional to digital or within digital that you're using a different sort of a marketing mix or media mix than you did before?
Yeah, certainly in our case, I mean, as a B2B organization that is a, professional services slash sort of in the professional services consulting category. Um, yeah, we certainly saw more of a shift that, certainly hockey sticked up from COVID and hasn't changed. And so digital is a really critical part of our marketing strategy. We over time have invested less in-person things like in-person conferences and events, and much more through external partners, things like webinars, certainly digital advertising and paid advertising through things like LinkedIn ads, where you can do much more targeted by buyer personas, that sort of thing, and by company size. Um, other sorts of digital engagement and ad campaigns. We've, certainly, of course, organic search and getting visibility through organic search is one of the names of the game, and it's one of the ways to drive more incremental inbound opportunities. I've yet to find a company who's really mastered that algorithm because, as we all know, Google changes those things on a dime several times a year. And things like search engine optimization is not something that you ever check off a list and say that we're done with. But it's one of those things that is the quote unquote playing the long game, right? That creates that, rightly or wrongly, people that show up highly on search engines have a certain element of credibility and trust built in because people are assuming that if they show up high in search engine results, that those are people that are credible.
Yeah,
Your job, of course, is once those people find you, is to create a really good web and digital experience that engages them, gets them to go further, gets them to fill out a form or subscribe to your newsletter or whatever the case may be to help you get tethered to them, so that you can invite them to other events, things like that. Get them to follow you on social media. Again, a lot of this ends up being very, very anonymous for a long, long time. Um, but they're all critical channels for both expanding the brand, like we were talking about, branding versus lead generation. Again, branding and lead generation is not something that you can decouple. You can't break down things into, well, what are we doing around branding and what are we doing around lead generation? You can try to sort of dissect your marketing strategy in that way if you want to, but as somebody has said to me before in that analogy, you'll typically kill the patient in the process.
right. Yeah, it's interesting how SEO has changed over the years. I actually got started in SEO before Google was founded, right, and been
Yeah.
busy in the category since then. And SEO is usually bucketed in with earned media, right? So
Mhm.
PR, digital PR, content marketing, et cetera. And Interestingly, as a result of the large language model AI bots, the chat bots, um, improving your odds of showing up in a chatbot result actually are driven to a great extent around content creation, digital PR, and making sure that there are a lot of folks talking positively about you because that's what feeds the LLMs if a question gets asked. So search engine visibility is now shifted into not just 10 links that a person might see, or maybe 15, depending on how many paid links there are and if there's a
Right.
map links or other things in there. Um, or how they've got their browser set. But those links in what we call the SERP, the search engine results page, now we're getting this block at the top in Google, or if you're using ChatGPT, Perplexity, or Claude, right, where
Right.
people are just asking a question and getting one answer, right? No longer do they get a choice of answers in many cases.
Yes, and
So
I think the way things like AI and Chat GPT are evolving and certainly evolving rapidly, and none of us really has a crystal ball into sort of where that's going even 12 or 18 months from now. Um, but to me, being in a marketing leadership role, it only emphasizes further the importance of content marketing, in
absolutely.
our case, thought leadership development, and getting it out there in place. Because where are those algorithms and AI tools getting their answers from? It's where that content is visible, highly visible, viewed as credible, and it's pulling that in to the results it's creating for you. So it all of that that's going on today only makes content marketing that much more important. And content that is very authentically value added, not self-serving in some sort of thinly veiled product pitch, but true valuable content, thought leadership development that adds value. Um, Again, selling and buying are very emotional, and creating that emotional connection, content, quality, really high quality content that's again visible in all the places that people in your target market are looking is has never been more valuable.
So if you were chatting with a fellow CMO in a B2B organization that perhaps was very sales centric, and so the executive team was also sort of sales centric, and let's say that it's worse, they're PE owned, right? And they're only going to have the company for 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, and they're getting pushback at any investment into some of these things that are a long game, right? Branding, awareness, SEO. These things don't typically manifest, benefits in the first 6 months. They may have some benefits in the first 6 months, but you don't really start to get the flywheel effect
Right.
until further on. So if somebody's getting pushback from the rest of their team or from the CFO on doing these kinds of content marketing, thought leadership pieces, establishing both personal and corporate brand for subject matter experts, all those kinds of things that also drive SEO at the same time,
Yes.
right? How would you recommend that they sort of advocate for the budget associated with needing to do that as opposed to just, hiring four more BDRs?
Yeah, so in B2B, marketing is not a gumball machine. It is not I'm going to put this quarter in and this is going to fall out the bottom immediately. It'd be nice if that happened, but again, unless you're sort of a B2C e-commerce organization that's very transactional, that's a different game, and I'm not in that world. But in B2B complex sales that have long buying cycles, you've got to understand the realities of some of the things that we talked about before. How many people are involved in the buying committee? How many vendors they're evaluating? How many pieces of content each of those buying committee members are looking at over an extended period of time? Do the math and multiply that out. And it's really hard for them to sort of make sense of everything that's coming at them. It's a very crowded, noisy digital world out there. I don't know what the math adds up to, but 9 to 11 people times four vendors that they're evaluating times 18, 20, 25 plus touch points that they're making with different brands gets into the hundreds of touch points. And you've got to have a really crisp, sharp, differentiated message that's present in the market for a long time. The quality of your sales pipeline today is not a result of what your SDRs were doing last week. The quality of your sales pipeline today is based on your investments in marketing, account-based marketing, what your salespeople have been doing 6, 9, 12 months ago. It's a direct reflection of that. It is not a reflection of last week. Similarly, if you have a pipeline problem, you're not going to fix it next week either. These are long-term sort of realities that have to be put in place. And there are certainly sort of urgent priorities where you can sort of pull levers that you might dial up and dial down a little bit more, a little bit less over time. But a lot of what we're talking about around digital marketing, SEO is such a great example. At a certain point, you've got to sort of let those things run and then make decisions based on the data over time. You can't make a decision on what's working or not based on knee-jerk reactions to your search engine positioning rising or falling over the last 5 days. What's gone on over the last 6 to 12 months? That's going to inform what I think has to be a very strategic approach to both sales and marketing. And consistency, I think, again, whether you're in a sales role or marketing, it's consistency of visibility, consistency of message, consistency of getting in front of your target audience. Again, and adding value at every touch point. Always think about adding value at every touch point. It's how you're going to win in the long run. It just is.
Great. Excellent point. What else should we be putting on CMO's radar, and what did we talk about in the last half hour that we should have covered?
Well, I think if you're talking to CMOs or marketing specific audiences, I think the importance of not working in silos and collaborating with sales leaders and with your sales organization and creating open, regular two-way dialogues about what they are seeing, because that viewpoint of people that are truly customer facing on a day-to-day level can really, really inform things like your content creation, your refining your ICP or ideal client profiles, digital channels that people are that they're seeing, that they're starting to look at and notice more. And hey, do we have a visible presence here? Because I'm hearing about this come up over and over again with buyers. Topics and themes that can inform your content strategy. All those things need to be sort of a collective, not that you're having committee meetings collectively across the entire sales and marketing team about each of those things, but it should be not working in silos and making sort of collective agreements on where we're trying to go, who we're trying to get in front of, and really sort of communicating at a much more frequent and much deeper level, I think. And I think it's really easy for anybody in almost any functional role to be heads down and sort of their just day-to-day work, and what I'm doing is right. But I think collaboration across the organization and not separating sales and marketing, just like you don't separate brand awareness building from lead generation. And I think also helping marketing and sales each understand that they have a role in understanding that you are the brand. The brand is not the logo. It's not your color palette. It's not your tagline. It's getting people to, going back to that example that someone said to me, which is, it's less about what people think of you and getting them to think of you at all. Gaining that visibility is absolutely a team sport. Your SDRs, your salespeople, your customer service teams all play a big role in, do customers think of you, and then what do they think of you? What comes to mind when your organization's name comes up? And it's not going to be some 45-second elevator pitch or 300-word about us boilerplate. It's not. It's going to be a single thought, a single moment in time, and they're going to dictate that. But you play a big role in helping to shape that over time.
That's an excellent point, Will. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. There's a lot of pearls of wisdom in there. Appreciate you joining me.
Of course. Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be with you.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.